ඔබ සැමට උතුම් දළදා සමුදුන්ගේ ආශිර්වාදය ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරනවා. සිහින් මල් වරුසාවක් ඓතිහාසික සෙන්කඩගල නුවරට ඇද වැටෙද්දී ඓතිහාසික සෙන්කඩගල නුවර ඇසල පෙරහැර මහා මංගල්‍යයේ සිව්වනි රන්දෝලි පෙරහැර අද දිනේ වීදි සංචාර කිරීම සඳහා සියලු කටයුතු සූදානම් වෙමින් පවතිනවා. මල්වතු අස්කිරි උභය මහා විහාරීය මහානායක මාහිම්පාණන් වහන්සේලාගේ අවවාද අනුශාසනා පෙරදැරිව ශ්‍රී දළදා මාලිගාවේ ගරු දේවර් නිලමේතුමන් සිව්මහා දේවාලයන්හි බස්නායක නිලමේතුමන්ලාගේ සංවිධාන ශක්තියෙන් මේ ඓතිහාසික පෙරහැර මංගල්‍ය සංවිධානය වෙනවා. වෙනදා නම් මේ නුවරට පැමිණ රිසිසේ සියසින් මේ පෙරහැර මංගල්‍ය සිරි විසිතුර ඔබට දැක ගැනීමට අවස්ථාව උදා. නමුත් මේ පවතින තත්ත්වයේ හමුවේ එම අවස්ථාව ඔබෙන් ගිලී ගියත් ඔබට මේ පෙරහැර මංගල්‍ය අසිරිය ඔබට සජීවීව සමීප කරන්නට අපි සියලු කටයුතු සූදානම්. ඒ නිසාවෙන් දළදා හාමුදුරුවන්ගේ ආශිර්වාදය ප්‍රාර්ථනා පෙරදැරිව අපි ඔබට ගෞරවයෙන් ආරාධනා කරනවා ඓතිහාසික කන්දුඩරට ඇසල පෙරහැර මහා මංගල්‍යයේ සිව්වන රන්දෝලි පෙරහැරේ සිරි විසිතුර අත්විඳින්නට.
Dalada Samidu Pihitai. We are delighted to welcome you to the special live broadcast of the 4th Randoli Perahera, brought to you by the Media Bureau of Sri Dalada Maligava.
You are now seeing the Perahera officials obtaining the permission and blessings of the Diyavadana Nilame before commencing their street perambulations.
What you see now is the handing over of keys by the Diyavadana Nilame to the officiating bhikkhus. Making his way from the upper to the lower chamber, the Diyavadana Nilame ceremoniously and reverentially takes the relic casket under the protection of the chief incumbent of the Mallatu Mahavihare, Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Medankara Nayaka Thero, to the royal Tuscany.
And now we see the Diyavadana Nilame majestically carrying the Perahera casket amidst showers of rain towards the royal tusker. This relic casket is placed within the Ranhili gate that is mounted on the adorned tusker who will light up this 4th Randoli Perahera.
Marking the beginning of the Kandy Esala Perahera dedicated to Lord Buddha, we see the Perahera officials offering flowers and garlands to the Perahera casket. There were times when the Dalada casket was being carried in the Perahera, but nowadays there's a special casket which is being carried in the Perahera, which is called the Perahera casket.
And this is the devout moment when the great tusker steps majestically down from the Mahavahalkada to the Sandagala in preparation to walk the streets of the city of Kandy. And the royal tusker on this evening for the 4th Randoli Perahera is Indiraja, belonging to the Sri Dalada Maligava.
Thus, we are about to witness the live broadcast brought to you from the ancient Mahamalu of Sri Dalada Maligava, the live broadcast of the 4th Randoli Perahera of the Esala Procession 2021. Walking up front with the sound of whips piercing through the skies are the whip crackers.
The duty of the whipmaster is to clear the way for the holy Perahera casket. In single file, they will wield their whips to notify the citizens of the impending approach of the Bhupati or the king.
The annual Perahera, which is held in the month of Esala, is believed to trigger the monsoon. Therefore, the sound of whips symbolizes the thunder which precedes the rain. Today, this group of whip crackers is led by Upali Jairatna.
The whip has to be carefully manipulated without hurting his colleagues. In the previous years, we have seen great numbers of people who throw coins into the paths of the whipmasters as an offering to ward off evil from their children and smoothen their life path.
Indeed, this is a beautiful tradition which used to highlight the basis for giving, offering, and also sharing among the people of our land. Isn't it so, Nilesh?
Indeed, but this year, sadly, we are not seeing physical spectators due to the current COVID-19 pandemic. But the Media Bureau of the Sri Dalada Maligawa will bring the splendid Perahera festival all the way to your home via cyberspace and the live broadcast.
When it comes to the duty of whipmasters, it is a duty which is handed down from generation to generation of their clans. According to our traditions, Peraheras that do not have this pedigree are not even worth being called such. While displaying a symbolic performance, these whipcrackers clear the way for the holy Perahera casket to be carried in the streets of the city.
And next, we see the fireball dancers joining the procession.
Just as lightning flashes across the skies, the Perahera too has its flashes of light dancing across the faces of people. This is the offering of fire to the gods to water our lands with rain.
The sight of lightning as a precursor to the descent of the rain gods is a phenomenon of nature. Those blinding flashes are a cooling heat in the Kandy Esala procession. This is the heritage of the traditions of our torch dancers.
And this group of fire dancers is led today by E.D. Tilakaratna.
The balls of fire of these dancers are wielded in rotational forms, painting the night with varied patterns of light. Once the oil-soaked rags are lit and tied to the ends of the wielding sticks with leather thongs, they are ready to the lightning strikes to the eye.
Exactly, Nilesh. The sun, moon, earth, universe, solar month, night, and day are all cyclic, and the fire dancers here highlight these universal cycles and how they burn and cool us in our life cycles as well.
These fire dancers are completely focused and immersed in their art, keeping their minds and bodies one pointed as they create their cyclic patterns of fire. This is because the slightest inattention could indeed result in a disaster.
Indeed, the dancers tame fire and give it as a dalada offering, mindful of its part in cooking, protecting crops and channels, and dispelling darkness while creating curiosity, satisfaction, and amazement to the people weaving the procession.
The true import of these dancers is seen when a large group of them perform simultaneously, merging their various fiery elements into an amazing display of light and heat. The tradition is handed down from generation to generation, with individuals of all ages, from the very young to the very old, taking part in the display of the kingly heritage of their clans.
The dancers are seen creating their paintings of fire across the night sky in this fourth Randoli procession as they move along the procession. For the children, it is a fire play, and for the experienced elders, it is a devout, committed fire dance.
The fiery life cycle, awash in desire, ignorance, and anger, is highlighted by the chakras that are painted by the fire dancers.
It is truly fabulous and wonderful to see how these fireball dancers commit themselves entirely in order to make this segment a beautiful one, a beautiful but dangerous one.
It also has to be mentioned that the team of Valpola Ginikeli from Ragama have been taking part in the fire dancing segment of the Kandy Esala Perahera for a long period of time.
coming into our sight now are the Buddhist flag bearers. And these Buddhist flag bearers are from Chandrananda Buddhist College, Kandy. The sight of the Buddhist flag, led by the national flag, creates a sense of unreflecting joy on the part of the people weaving the Kandy Esala procession, reminding them that this is a national celebration, devotion, and offering to the Buddha.
The Buddhist flag was jointly designed by Mr. J.R. De Silva and Colonel Henry Steele Olcott to mark the revival of Buddhism in Ceylon. In fact, it was accepted as the international Buddhist flag in the year 1952 at the World Buddhist Congress.
Exactly, Nilesh. The Buddhist flag is a symbol of faith and peace. 6 colors of the flag represent the colors of the aura that emanated from the body of Lord Buddha when he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The horizontal strips represent the races of the world living in harmony, while the vertical strips represent eternal world peace.
The flag bearers indeed create a sense of unlimited compassion of the Buddha through the sacred Dalada tooth relic. This sight calms the undisciplined, wayward minds and focuses them on a procession of the love and the compassion radiating across the universe.
Exactly, Nilesh. Adding to what you just said, these white-clad flag bearers also remind the people of the way the Buddha's Dhamma impacts their lives and also the way to obtain and release from this cycle of life.
From the day that the sacred tooth relic arrived on this island, the eightfold path, farming and rural life were established in a smooth, unhurried, disciplined system of existence.
Up next, we have another group of flag bearers. Indeed, these are the cloth flag bearers or the provincial flag bearers.
The area flags that we see here display the flags of all the areas that come under the control of the Bhupati or the Senkadagala king.
During the times of the kings, the people of the Korale divisions and state officials of Kandodarata with Disakodi flying high joined the procession.
Just to explain the flags that we are seeing here, the first was the sun-moon stand of the Satara Korale, next the lion flag of the Sat Korale, then in line the white flag of Matale, the silk flag of Sabaragamua, the flag with the Beruda Pakshiya of the Tun Korale, the peacock flag of the Uva Walapane, and lotus stands of Udapalata.
This is the traditional display of the provincial standards that remind us of the present day, remind us of the glory and sovereignty of the time of the Senkadagala kings. And next, we have a group of brass standard bearers led by Ajit Mahindra.
The brass Disa flags we see here indeed represent the glory of Senkadagala. Both gold and brass workers belong to the same clan or Gurukulaya, which we call as the Navandana clan.
These flag bearers, in fact the brass standard bearers, offer their service to the people of the land and represent the Hela traditions, the national traditions, by participating in this procession.
The fine art of melting precious metal into things of beauty was an exclusive part of their talent.
And also with the durability of the brass flag, the kings of old offered their hope of similar durability and sustainability to the entire nation.
This indeed reflects the levels of artistry with the detailed engravings that you could clearly witness if you notice the detail in these stands.
Up next, in the Dalada procession, we see the sword carriers led by the representatives of Chandrananda Buddhist College. And these sword bearers symbolize the protection given to the entire Perahera.
The Dalada Perahera is a procession aimed at reducing and eradicating sorrow and sadness. Yet, when people see these sword bearers walking in it, there is certainly going to be a question as to why someone who is wielding a weapon has been made part of it, isn't it, Sachini?
Very true, Nilesh. There is only pride in the minds of those who know the Dalada traditions when they see these sword bearers. Let's go back a little bit into the history.
Definitely. The sacred tooth relic has been a symbol of kingship in the country from the day it was brought here. Therefore, there were many wars that were fought for this procession. The history of these skirmishes spans thousands of years, from the Anuradhapura period all the way to Senkadagala. The relic was protected by the might of the sword-wielding warriors.
And now we see the Peramune Rala riding a royal tusker.
And leading the procession today is the celebrity tusker Nedungamuye Raja, who belongs to Dr. Harsha Dharmavijaya of Verivaria.
Talking about the duty of the Peramune Rala leading the elephant procession is to inform the citizens of the country that the procession is being carried out in accordance with the directives of this crown.
Nedungamuye Raja we see in front of us has been in the 2021 Esala Perahera after 10 days of walking.
And Nilesh, today we also have the veteran artist Kalakirti Ravibandhu Vidyapati. I think we could ask Sir about this tradition of the heavy drill.
Thank you. And what we see now is the heavy performance. The avant-garde drummers representing the traditional Sinhala orchestra known as the Panchaturya Nada. The fivefold musical sounds represented here are the Daula, the large cylindrical drum, Tammatama, the two-faced kettle drum, Talampata, the little hand cymbals to keep the beat, and Horanava, the traditional Sri Lankan horn, all played together, giving a symphonic sound. The art of drumming in Sri Lanka was kept alive by the traditional families for many centuries. Here we see the drummers from the four main lineages Ihalavela, Molagodu, Udavela and Malagammana, whose ancestors were assigned by the king. to perform the duties to the sacred tooth relic.
And I think this is the first time we get to hear the strains of Gajaga Vandama in the entire procession.
You're right, the Gajaga Vannama tune is one synonymous with most of the dances and heavy groups of the Dalada Perahera.
Coming into our side now is the Gajanayaka Nilame of Sri Daladamaligava. The Gajanayaka Nilame arrives as a royal official in charge of the troop of elephants, and it is a position given to him directly by the king himself in the days of old.
And the tusker on whom the Gajanayak Nilame is joining the procession today is Kotte Raja, belonging to Venerable Alutnumara Anuruddha Thero, the chief incumbent of the Kotte Raju Mahavihara. Raja was a tusker who was gifted to Sri Lanka in the year 2009 from the state of Myanmar on behalf of the former minister Rohitha Bogollagama.
And the Gajanayak Nilame rides the elephant with a gold ankusa, which is also called a gold elephant goat, which is the emblem of his office.
We see the Kothalapade dancers advancing. Kothalapade is a classical dance adapted from the Komba Kankari ritual. Kothalapade symbolizes sprinkling of saffron water, a sanitizer to purify the Perahera path.
This group today is led by Nalin Jayasekara. As we see the movements of these water carrier dancers or the Kotalapada dancers, I think we are also reminded of the Pirit water carrier, the yellow water carrier, and also the milk carrier, which are usually accustomed with our traditions. The sight of the water carrier dancers, I think, gives us confidence that all our dreams will come true.
And following the Kothalapade dance act, we now see the elephant with an official carrying a Buddhist flag, simply to symbolize that this is truly a Buddhist festival. And the elephant we see right in front of us is Banda, who is the junior elephant belonging to the Honorable Diyavadana Nilame Pradeep Nilanga Dela. An interesting fact about Banda that you would like to know is that he stands among the 10 tallest domestic elephants living in the country. And that fact simply proves with his majesty we see. Another interesting feature that I would like to comment is that style that Banda rolls up his trunk and bites it, which was seen in the times of the king when the elephants were trained to bite their trunk, since the trunk being quite an important organ, If damaged, it could be life-threatening, and this is a norm that is trained among many elephants hailing from the upcountry.
The presence of majestic tuskers and elephants adds color and so much glamour to this entire procession. And the tunes which are associated with the procession has a truly elephantine vibe as well. Isn't that so, Nilesh?
Indeed, Sajni.
We now see a group of Thalam dancers. Thalam dance is a popular folk dance found in many parts of Sri Lanka, and here this is the upcountry version of this vibrant dance form, accompanied by the sounds of the Kandian drum, the Perahera.
This group of castanet players or Thalam players is led by Nimesh Sumanaratna.
Thalam dance is categorized under the group of Rupa Natum mentioned in our traditional literature, meaning picturesque dances.
And I think the castanet players here create that mix of tonal qualities and timing counts, reminding the people of the event and timely life of the Buddha. I think the tone or the tune we hear is quite a significant one, a symbolic one as well. What do you think, sir?
Well, the flute tune represents a popular tune from dance music. Now here we find a fine combination of the low country and upcountry dances, as the tune resembles more low country flavors. The drums that accompany the Thalam dance is a combination of Daula, Tammatama and the Perahera, three of the main categories of the Panchaturinada or the fivefold musical instruments.
And now we see the fourth elephant in today's Randoli Perahera, and this is Gajaba, who belongs to Mr. Ranjit Vijay of the Moranwatta Devalaya in Yakkala.
And on Gajaba's mount, we see a canopy bearer symbolizing the protection provided to the sacred casket. Up next, we have a group of Pantheru dancers.
The Kandy Perahera is a fantastic showcase of all the types of upcountry dances or Udarata Natuva. Pantheru dance is an essentially Buddhist form of dance that grew within the surroundings of the rich and fertile Buddhist culture.
And this group today is led by Sarak Vijay. I think this instrument, the Pantheru, has so much of significance and importance, especially to mention that this is an instrument which is regular to the Kavikara Maduva or chanting groups of the procession.
Well, yes, the dancers here perform songs or chants from rituals such as Sat Satya, Pansalistvas and Suisi Vivarana, the dance rituals performed as an offering to the Buddha.
Followed by the Pantheru dance performance, we see two elephants with officials carrying Burmese flags. And to name these elephants, on one side we have Punchibanda, who belongs to Mr. Kitsiri Mevan Velagedara of Panaliya, and on the other side we have Raja, who belongs to Mr. Sita Senanayaka Mallava of Hettimulla. And it must be mentioned that both Raja and Punchibanda are quite known friends, including their mahouts Lanka and Kitsiri themselves. If you could notice in the headpiece of the costume of these elephants, we can see the sun and the moon, which is an icon that is used in the Perahera festivals to symbolize that the Perahera tradition will continue till the eternal existence of the sun and the moon.
this is the group of coconut flower dancers led by W.M. Dayananda.
Malpadaya is the coconut flower dance. The coconut flower is considered as a symbol of prosperity in our culture. Also, the use of tender coconut leaves to decorate ritual arena is a common practice in the Sinhala dance culture. Here we see the dance Malpadaya as adapted from the ancient ritual Kohomba Kankariya.
The Dalada pageant is the great ceremony that is believed to bring timely rains and fertility to the land. And we can assume that these dancers pray for that bounty with their coconut flowers. Their prayer is that the country continues in peace and prosperity, especially during this time of the pandemic.
Followed by these coconut flower dancers, we see the only single tusked elephant of the Dalada Perahera segment. And this tusker is Sindhu, who belongs to the most venerable Mahanayaka Thero of the Malvatu Mahavihara, Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Siddhartha Sumangala Thero, and the name of this young tusker is Sindhu.
Following Sindhu, we have a group of Nayadi dancers led by Vasanta Gunatilaka and Vasanta Rajankana.
Nayandi is in fact the name of this particular costume, which consists of the lower part of the vest costume that omits only the elaborate headgear, the crowning piece of the entire outfit, which is replaced here with a simple white turban. Hence the dance is called Nayandi dance. Preceding that vigorous kastirama or the ending phrase of the dance, the dancers performed what is known as narumatra, holding the two pleated cloths as fans.
And followed by these Nayandi dancers, we now see Kandula Veera, belonging to Venerable Kanangama Narada Thero, the chief incumbent of the Sankapitti Vihara in Kaduwela. Kandula Veera is in fact one of the retired mascots of the Sri Lanka army, who was named as Kandula IV, and today is a very gentle elephant taking part in the Perahera processions island-wide.
During the times the people were lined up in the streets to watch the Perahera, the Dalada procession, we can say this was one of the most awaited items of the entire procession, the Raban performance or the tambourine performance.
Raban Karakavima, as it is commonly known, although called the Raban dance, this in fact is a sport. Raban Kridava, as it is referred to in our traditional literature, which involves the skills of spinning and balancing the tambourine on the fingers and on the tip of a long flexible stick.
I think so the spinning rabana or the spinning tambourine can be taken as a symbol for impermanence too, because it reminds us that we may lose our life in an instance in the same way that the rabana breaks free from the rod or the stick on which it is spinning.
Indeed, it symbolizes the fragility of life as described in Buddhist philosophy. This particular variety of the Rabana is known as Karakavana Rabana. Amongst the other types of Rabanas, which we see now, the Atrabana, and the spinning Rabana is known as the Karakavana Rabana.
This group is led by Aryapala Vijayamana.
And now we see one of the young yet handsome elephants taking part in the Dalada Perahera segment. The name of this elephant is Madhu, and the owner of Madhu is Venerable Murundiniye Dhammaratana Thero, who is the chief incumbent of the Mutiyangana Rajamaha Vihara in Badulla. Speaking of the Mutiyangana Rajamaha Vihara, it is quite an important temple to the Sri Dalada Maligava, because the Mahanayaka Thero of the Askiri chapter is in fact a resident of the Mutiyangana Rajamaha Vihara.
Up next, we hear a sound which is uniquely recognized with the Dalada rituals.
The group of Thammattam dancers advancing through the Perahera path with a profound yet energetic rhythm. Thammattama is one of the main drums of Sri Lanka and plays a predominant role in Buddhist festivals as a temple drum together with the dowla. Adata, Vitata, Vitatata, Ghana, Suchira are the 5 types of instruments of the Sinhala orchestra, and Tammatama belongs to the category of Vitata as it is played with sticks known as Kadipu.
And this group is led by Sujitananda.
This is Kandula Tissa, the elephant of the Ratnapura Mahasaman Devalaya, who is in fact responsible for the annual pilgrimage of God Saman in the Asala Perahera festival of the Ratnapura Mahasaman Devalaya, and here we see him taking part in the Dalada Perahera.
Up next, we see yet another beautifully local tradition or a local performance. Sir?
Well, Mishra Gaminatuma, or a few types of folk dances combined together as one performance. This is somewhat a modern adaptation from the traditional folk dances, especially for the Kandy Perahera. Represented here are Likeli, the sticks, Raban, the small hand Rabana, Talam, the castanets, and Chamara, the fans.
I think the whole purpose or the objective of adding a segment like this to the Dalada procession is to remind the citizens of our local culture, our history, and also the agrarian environment, agrarian society which prevailed back then.
We see the two friends walking together for the first time in the Dalada Perahera. On one side we have Kanchana and on the other we have Bibila, both belonging to the Mahanayaka Thero of the Sri Lanka Amarapura Nikaya under the responsibility of Mr. Mahinda Galapatti in Giriyulla.
And now we see the second group of Pantheru dancers in the Dalada procession.
Panterua is a circular brass frame instrument with small cymbals fixed onto it to give a subtle metallic trill as it shakes. Tanterua was originally used to keep the beat in the singing or chanting of the chamber of versifiers, the Kavikara Madhua, and later adapted as a form of essentially Buddhist form of dance.
For the very first time in the Kandy Esala Perahera for 2021, we see the participation of female elephants in the Dalada Perahera, and the first three to lead is Rani, belonging to Mr. S.M. Samaranayaka of the Velamboda Kandy Devalaya, Little Ganga, belonging to the Gangarama temple, and also another Rani, also belonging to Mr. Chanaka Jayasekara of Pallebedda.
And this is a group of Udaki players which is led by M.B. Tennakon.
Udaki is yet another semi-classical dance form of the Kandian style.
If we observe the dance or the performance of these Udaki players, it is relatively simple.
Well, the dance form combines singing, playing the drum and dancing, and this is the only Sri Lankan dance form that involves the three activities together by one single performer.
We see another duo of elephants on whose mount we see officials carrying Burmese flags. And the two elephants we see here is Mali, belonging to Mr. Chatura Vikramanayaka of Horana, and on the other side we see Kueni, belonging to Mr. Mahinda Millangoda of Kegol, who represents the great family of Millangoda, who had elephants taking part in the Dalada Perahera for a long period of time. And Mali here is the elephant who we saw accompanying the requilleries of God Vishnu in the previous pageants.
Now we have another group of Nayandi dancers led by Saman Nilvita.
The costume of the Nayandi dancers represent part of the West dancers' costume, namely the Ulludaya, the long cloth, Nisan Sangala, the puffy frills on either side, Devalla, the two long braids on the sides, and Inahadaya, the ornament in front that resembles the elephant's forehead decor. Adding more glamour to the costume is the owl harrier, the beaded chest plate.
After quite a long number of years, we see the tradition of three tuskers who are walking in front of the ceremonial tusker carrying the Perahera casket. And to name them, in the middle we have the great tusker Vasana belonging to the Ruhuru Maha Kataragama Devalaya, and Vasana is accompanied by Singharaja and Burumaraja belonging to the Sri Dalada Maligava stables. I believe the last time we saw such a sight was in the year 2009.
And this is yet another fabulous sight to see in the Dalada procession. The first group of West dancers led by Ishanta Ihalavela and Lasantha Vansekara.
West is the grand classical dance of Sri Lanka. This most glamorous costume symbolically represents the regalia of Kings Malaya, the royal brothers who performed the first ancient ritual Hatapas Mangalya 2500 years ago.
I think it is considered an honor for a West dancer to perform right in front of the majestic tusker who carries the sacred casket.
You're right, it is the aspiration, the sole aspiration of every dancer, every West dancer to dance before the sacred tooth relic. Profound, serene yet energetic movements of the majestic Kandian dance, paying reverence to the majestic tusker.
It is the Karya Karavana Korale who is walking just before the ceremonial tusker who carries the sacred casket, clad in his official white clothes, and his duty is to see if the procession is done right. And this is the most awaited moment of today's procession. For the first time in the Grand Esala procession in 2021, we see the majestic tusker walking on the white pavada under the grand canopy.
And this prestigious role is designated to the leader of the Sri Dalada Maligava stables, who is Indiraja. And Indiraja is accompanied by Miyan Raja belonging to the Sri Dalada Maligava and Kandula of the Kalaniya Rajamaha Viharaya.
Next, we see a group of officials carrying flowers, and right before them, we see the chamber of versifiers of Sri Dalada Malikavu chanting hymns in praise of Lord Buddha as well as sacred tooth relic. And these individuals are carrying flowers as well as oil lamps to pay homage to the sacred relic casket.
Sachin, if we could explain the role of a simple oil lamp and flowers in the story of Sri Lankan Buddhists.
Yes, Nilesh, I think whenever we visit temples as Buddhists, we usually carry flowers, lanterns, and specifically oil lamps, incense sticks. I think that tradition is symbolized here from this flower lantern group, and they follow the majestic tusker who carries the 32 relics of Lord Buddha symbolizing the Dalada Tooth relic in order to pay their homage and in order to make this an offering to Lord Buddha as well as the sacred tooth relic.
Even how simple it looks, it does stand a great meaning to the Kandy Esala Perahera. And followed by them, we see the second troop of West dancers who will be escorting the Diyavadana Nilame.
And this troop of West dancers, in fact, as you mentioned, the second troop of West dancers that we see in the Dalada procession itself is led by Sanjeeva Verapitiya and Peter Surasena.
Slow and serene, they dance to the tune of the Gajaga Vannama. Even though the Kandian dance originated and nurtured in the pre-Buddhist ritual of Kumbha Kankariya, thriving amongst Buddhist cultural surroundings, it has assumed a completely Buddhist form.
now Here we see the Devadan Nilame of Sri Dalada Maligava. In fact, the Devadan Nilame is the lay custodian of the sacred tooth relic, who is appointed by royal decree, and he is the individual tasked with protecting the Dalada with his own life. Ushered by the West dancers, the Devadan Nilame of Sri Dalada Maligava, Honorable Pradeep Nilangadala, takes the Kandian streets now. The final responsibility for the whole of this mighty procession rests upon him, and he is guarded by his guards and followed by the Vidanes of 10 villages.
If carefully noticed, it is the custom that the Devar Nilame will be adorned in the color worn by the ceremonial tusker.
And these are the Vidanes of the 10 villages under the Senkadagala king. And we are about to witness the beginning of the Natha Devale procession. These are the Buddhist flag bearers, which symbolize the upcoming procession of Sri Mahanatha Devala in Kandy. And the first of the 4 Devala Peraharas is that of the Natha Devale. It is accepted that God Natha is the coming Buddha. Therefore, the Perahera of the Natha Devale is dedicated to God Natha, who is believed to be aspiring to attain Buddhahood.
And these flag bearers are represented by the Civil Defence Headquarters of Pallekele. And following the flag bearers, we now see the leading elephant of the Natha Devala Perahera, who is Rohana, belonging to Mr. Varuna Kannangara. In fact, the elephants from the family of Kannangara have been playing a part of the Sri Mahanatha Devala Perahera for a long time. And on the mount of Rohana, we see an official carrying the Mahakodiya, or the flag of God Natha.
We now see the Natha Devala ensemble of drummers advancing in simple steps to the sound of Gaman Hevisi, the rhythms compatible with the drummer's walk. The rhythm, if uttered verbally, goes like this. It is customary that with the change of each street of the Perahera, as they turn off, the leading drummers change the rhythm pattern.
And now we see the second elephant of the Sri Mahanatha Devala Perahera, who is Arjuna, belonging to the Vyavurukannala Rajamahawihara of Dikwella. And on the mount of Arjuna, we see the Gajanayaka Nilame. And in fact, this particular Gajanayaka Nilame is the Basnayaka Nilame of the Pitiya Bandara Devala in Vatapulu, which is in fact a shrine which is connected to the Sri Mahanatha Devala in Kandy.
And this is the first time we see the group of Savaram dancers, a group of Savaram dancers in fact, in the Dalada procession today.
Savarang is a popular folk dance with these tussled sticks, usually coming under the category of Rupa Natum, making picturesque formations as they make their way through the Perahera path. These young dancers seem to celebrate the glory of the grand pageant in their energetic movements.
It was believed that God Natha was yellow in complexion. Therefore, in this Perahera segment, we see even the tuskers clad in yellow.
Indeed, and this particular elephant who is also clad in yellow is Vijitaraja, belonging to the Dibulagala Aranya Senansaya.
And this is a group of Pantheru dancers that we see in the Natha Devala procession.
The Pantheru dance is considered as a semi-classical Kandian dance form. There are traditional families who handed down from generation to generation this valuable form of dance. And some of these families are Urapola, Alapalava, Kadigamuwa, Pataheva, Hatta, and Verake.
And now we see an elephant who has been taking part in the procession of God Natha since his childhood. And this elephant is Bandara, who belongs to Mr. Kamal Kitsiri of Kottava.
And this is a group of young castanet players joining the Natha Devali procession.
Talampata or the castanets are mainly used to keep the beat for drumming or dancing.
This is the group of Thumb beaters, thumb players in the Natha Devali Perahera segment.
The Ridigama Thummattam tradition is what they represent here, has been considered one of the valuable generations or valuable families of Thummattam playing.
And followed by these thumb beaters, now we see Lasanda, who belongs to the Devinura Upulwan Vishnu Devalaya.
Yet another group of West dancers, and this is in fact the first group of West dancers that we see in the Natha Devali procession.
The West dance was introduced to the Dalada Perahera in the year 1917 by the then Diyavadana Nilame P.B. Nugavala Disal.
It could be said that the most unique and most recognized of the Kandian dance heritage is the fully adorned West Nattua, West dancer, or the Kandian dancer. The semicircular form of the West dancer's decorated headgear
symbolizes the sun god.
And this is the chief incumbent of Sri Mahanatha Devale, Kandy.
And followed by the chief incumbent, we see the ceremonial tusker Muthuraja of the Alutgama Kandy Vihara belonging to Venerable Okkavita Vipulasara Thero, carrying the godly ornaments for the 9th consecutive year. And accompanying Muthuraja, we saw Kumari also belonging to the Kandy Vihara and Rani belonging to Mr. Nalaka Jayasinghe of Godagama.
Now we see the second troop of West dancers welcoming the Basnaik Nilame of Natha Devale.
It would be interesting to notice that the rhythm of the West dancers have gradually changed from very serene slow tempo to a rather the dancers' performance holding the two pleated cloths, the Narumatra, in the form of a fan was popularized by the great Kandian dance guru Nittavela Gunaya.
And now we see, representing the Basnaik Nilame of the Sri Mahanatha Devale, Anura Iriyagama, who is the Basnaik Nilame of the Vegiriyanatha Devale, alongside with Basnaik Nilame Ryan Walisundara, who is the Honorable Basnaik Nilame of the Ambokka Pattini Devale in Matale. First Perahera festival in which Basnaik Nilame Ryan Walisundar will be taking part as the newly appointed Basnaik Nilame of the Ambokka Devale, which is one of the oldest shrines in the district of Matale.
That ends the procession of Natha Devale, leading to the commencement of Vishnu Devale procession. And now I see the flag bearers in the Vishnu Devale procession. And as we see these flag bearers, there are some distinct feature, there are some distinct nature in these flags. In fact, these are the provincial flags.
If we can ask Mr. Ravi Bandhu sir, on why the provincial flags are being displayed in the procession of God Vishnu.
Well, here the Kandy Perahera is in a way connected to the Satara Korale region, and Vishnu Deyo or God Vishnu is synonymous or associated with Satara Korale, as the Vishnu Devalaya before it was established here in Kandy was situated in Satara Korale.
Which could be the reason probably why in the first elephant we see an official carrying the flag of the Satara Korale.
Definitely.
And this troop of flag bearers are represented once again by the Civil Defence Headquarters of Pallikali.
We can also notice the change of color from other colors to predominantly blue, being the color associated with God Vishnu.
Exactly. At the same time, the vehicle of God Vishnu is Gurula, and we would see in these flags and in these clothes the Gurula, which is a mythical bird, portrayed.
The Alutnuwara Dadimunda Devalaya is a shrine that is administratively connected to the Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya, and this elephant we see in front of us is Suranimala, who belongs to the same shrine.
We see the Vishnu Devala Hevisi group advancing in a traditional Gaman Hevisi rhythm. Led by the conch shell blower in front. Followed by the horn players playing the traditional Gajaga Vannam.
This Hevisi troop is led by Saman Priyanta, and it truly emits an unmistakably elephantine vibe.
And the drummers with these decorated tassels represent their traditional lineages, the Panikka lineages, the leaders of the drummers of the Perahera, as they were assigned by the king.
Even though we call the Kandy Esala Perahera an upcountry event, we can notice that this particular tradition is hailing from the Sabaragamu Alutnuwara Hevisi troop.
The Daula is associated with the Sabaragamu dance. It is also spread all over Sri Lanka as a predominantly Buddhist percussion instrument, as it is played in the temples together with Tammatana.
Followed by the Hevisi troop, we now see the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya, who is on the mount of Haritha, belonging to Mr. Tusita Ranavaka of Deniyaya. It can be noticed that in the Devala shrines, we notice a silver anchors instead of the gold anchors which we noticed in the Dalada Perahera, and the Gajanayaka Nilame traditionally clad in the white costume instead.
And this is a group of wooden stick dancers. In fact, this is the first time we see an entire group of wooden stick dancers, and that also in the Vishnu Devala procession.
Clad in blue, these young dancers perform the virile and energetic Likeli, a popular folk dance. The dance also symbolizes the combats between the sword fighters, the great warriors of our proud past.
This group of wooden stick dancers is led by M.P.R. Bandara.
A representation from the Muthiyangana Raja Mahavihara in the Sri Mahavishnu Devala Perahera is always witnessed. Unfortunately, Kandula, who was in this position, passed away a few weeks ago, but taking his place, the younger elephant Muthu, belonging to the Muthiyangana Raja Mahavihara, is seen now in the procession of God Vishnu.
And this is the group of Savaram dancers clad in gleaming blue in the Vishnu Devala procession.
Followed by that energetic dance performance, we see two more elephants joining the procession. On one side, we see Galkulama, belonging to Mr. Mahinda Millangoda of Kegol, and on the other side, we see Gamunu Kandula, belonging to the Pinnavala Elephant Orphanage.
And on their mounts, we see a canopy and also a cobra-headed canopy, symbolizing the protection provided to the godly ornaments of God Vishnu. And now we have a group of Udaki dancers or Udaki players in the Vishnu Devala procession.
The drum udakya was initially used to give rhythmic accompaniment to the panegyric songs of the Kavikara Madura. The hourglass-shaped drum udakya that the dancers carry and play while they dance and sing is found all over the world and is considered one of the basic forms of drums that are found in different areas of percussion cultures of the world.
And now we see the future of the Sri Dalada Perahera. Two young tuskers. On one side we see Mihin Raja, and on the other side we see Rohana Raja, both belonging to Mr. M.K. Vanyarachi of Veeraketiya.
Coming into our sight now is the group of Pantheru dancers in the Vishnu Devala procession.
And now we see 3 more elephants joining the procession. In fact, the Vishnu Devala Perahera is where we see a range of elephant troops. And to name this troop of elephants, on one side we have Sanju belonging to Mr. Jagat Vitana, we have Pooja belonging to Mrs. Kamini Samarasinghe, and Pillumale belonging to the Pinnavala Elephant Orphanage.
We see a Nayandi group of dancers advancing. Now, the Nayandi costume is the attire that an amateur dancer wears before having the ceremonial donning of the traditional vest costume. But the dancers here are not amateurs, but they are well-trained dancers.
In fact, we heard about the Nittavela Guru Nanse from you previously, and this troupe is in fact from the Nittavela Mulguru Kalayatana, who hails from the Nittavela Guru Nanse, if we recall from the previous comment.
Similar to the West dance, we see the Narumatra performance here in the Nayandi dance as well.
Yes, as it was popularized by their ancestor Guru Nittavela Gunaya. Guru Nittavela Gunaya is one of the first dancers, Kandian dancers, to take the Kandian form of dance outside Sri Lanka into the world.
That is quite an interesting fact. And behind this veteran dance troupe, we see 3 more veteran elephants, in fact, taking part. On one corner, we have None belonging to Mr. Sarath Jayalat of Maspota. In the middle, we have Tikiri belonging to Mr. Jagat Vitana of Matugama. And on the corner, we have quite a special character, and she is Muthu, who belongs to Mr. Indika Mudunkot of Manikinna. And this particular speciality is that she has been taking part in the procession of God Vishnu for a long period of years.
Now the first troop of West dancers in the Vishnu Devala procession. And this troop is led by Kondatiniye Samansire.
The use of the long tail-like piece in the movements is one of the predominant features of Kandian dance. The long tail, known as Eka Valor,
Now we see the chief incumbent of the Vishnu Devalaya in Kandy walking up front. This is the most devout moment in the Vishnu Devalaya Perahera segment.
Now we see the godly ornaments of God Vishnu being carried by the ceremonial tusker Rama, who belongs to Mr. Tudor Gunasekara of Heyanthudua. And accompanying Rama, on one side we have Sita belonging to Miss Nilanthi Veerasinghe of Mirigama, and on the other side we have Vasana belonging to Mrs. Krishanthi Alapatha of Ratnapura. In fact, this is Sita's very first time accompanying the godly ornaments of God Vishnu, but the 6th consecutive year of Vasana.
The second troupe of West dancers that we see in the Vishnu Devalaya Perahera segment, led by Sarat Ekanayaka.
It is the common belief of all the dancers and is also mentioned in the literature pertaining to the Kuhumba Kankarya that there is a god or deity associated with every part of this sacred costume from head to toe.
We hear some unique chants uttered by these West dancers while performing. And it is believed that these chants are uttered as a form of blessing for the approaching Basnayak Nilame and the accompanying Basnayak Nilames.
Representing the Basnayak Nilame of the Sri Mahavishnu Devalaya in Kandy, we have the Basnayak Nilame of the Lanka Tilaka Vishnu Devalaya, Priyantha Amanugama. And with him, we also have the Basnayak Nilame of the Morape Kataragama Devalaya, Honorable S.K. Ratnayaka. In fact, both the Lanka Tilaka and the Morape shrines are located in one of the most scenic locations in Sri Lanka, which any traveller would like to visit.
As the Basnayak Nilames leave our sight, We are about to witness the end of the Vishnu Devala procession. And that marks the commencement of the Kataragama Devala procession.
God Kataragama is considered as one of the guardians of Lanka and Buddhism in particular. Ancient literature has it that the Buddha entrusted to him the task of protecting Buddhism in Sri Lanka.
Marking the beginning of the Kataragama Devala procession as well, now we have a group of Buddhist flag bearers once again reminding us that the entire procession is Buddhist in nature.
Interestingly, we also see a flag depicting a picture of King Ravana. And I would like to ask Mr. Ravi Bandhu about the connection between Ravana and the procession of God Kataragama.
Well, King Ravana, as the legend has it, was a devout follower and devotee of God Shiva. And God Kataragama is the younger son of God Shiva and Goddess Parvati, and is also known as one of his attributed tasks is to act as god of war. Perhaps hence the color red associated with him.
Exactly, and this segment we would be able to see vigorous dance forms, very vibrant dance forms which are dedicated to God Kataragama, who is considered a warrior god. And if you observe these flags very carefully, you may be able to see the symbol of peacock throughout. And the importance, the significance of using this symbol of peacock on these flags is to remind us that God Kataragama ascends on the back of a peacock. Therefore, the symbol of peacock is used as the vehicle of God Kataragama. That's why we can see this symbol on these flags that are being carried now.
All gods and deities of Hinduism are associated with animals as they use them as their vehicles. God Kataragama ascends on the peacock and Vishnu upon Garuda or Gurula, and God Shakra or Indra ascends upon Airavana, the sacred elephant.
And now we have the heavy beaters in the Kataragama Devala procession, signaling us of the impending approach of the procession.
Here too we see the leading Guru Paramparavas or the lineages leading the group Ever since the sacred Bodhi sapling was brought to Lanka by Theri Sangamitta, paying homage to the Buddha and sacred objects associated with the Buddha has been a long-standing tradition. The drummers who came along with Theri Sangamitta, the Guild of Drummers for the services of the Bodhi sapling and other temples. These long tradition has been a living tradition in Sri Lanka.
And now we see the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya on the Mount of Manike, who belongs to Mr. Anura Kempitiya of Kulpane in Kegol.
Clad in red, we see a group of young castanet players once again making their tune in the Kataragama Devala procession. And it is to be noted that all the participants, in fact most of the participants in this Perahera segment, will be wearing red, symbolizing the color of God Kataragama.
We now see another elephant of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya, who is Kadira, belonging to the Vipashyarama temple in Maharagama. In fact, another name to call God Kataragama is also Kadira, and coincidentally, Kadira is taking part in the procession of God Kataragama this year. And next up, we see a wooden stick dance represented by Mr. Upali Dharmaratna of the Upali Dharmaratna Kala Ayatanaya of Madale.
I think the sound which is synonymous with the dance of the wooden stick dancers is that of the flute.
Along with the drums, the flute plays an important role in playing the melodies of the traditional Likeli songs.
With an official with a canopy to symbolize protection, that elephant we saw was Ratna, belonging to the Palmadulla Rajamahaviharaya.
A group of Udaki players join in the procession now.
In the tradition of Udaki playing, there are 5 main rhythm patterns known as the Donta Paha. It is customary that every student of the Udaki dance must learn the main beats of Donta Paha and the chants pertaining to the 5 beats.
And now we see Sama, who belongs to Venerable Uduwe Dhammaloka Thero, the chief incumbent of the Alan Methiniyarama temple in Kirulapana.
And this is the most fabulous dance form which is often associated with god Kataragama, the peacock dance.
This most colorful dance also has some connection to South Indian folk dances.
Along with this beautiful dance, we see a different tune now in the Esala procession.
It is usually considered that the deep south region of Sri Lanka is the area that is popular for god Kataragama, and this particular dance act is also from Tissa Maharana, which is from the deep south of Sri Lanka, represented by Mr. Thilakasiri Uskodarachi of the Mutuhara Kala Ayatanaya.
I think this is a very good occasion for us to state that this entire procession shows us the coexistence of different cultures.
The orchestra that accompanies music to this dance consists of different types of percussion, mainly the tawil, one of the traditional South Indian drums, and some Western instruments, the snare drum, the trumpet,
One can hear the heady fast beat that is classically associated with the dance forms in the Kataragama Devale, Perahera.
And that troupe of peacock dancers were trained by Miss Vinitha Jayaratna of the Ranamayura Kala Ayatanaya of Galevela. Following this peacock dance, we now see Chula, the young elephant belonging to Venerable Vengamuwe Dhammadinna Thero, the chief incumbent of the Siripada Viharaya and the Palmadulla Rajamaha Viharaya. In fact, 2021 was a special year for Chula since he got the first opportunity to carry the godly ornaments of god Kataragama for the first time in his life.
The red-clad dancers represent the Kavadi dance, the most popular dance form in the Kataragama Perahera segment. The dancers carry the weapons belonging to god Kataragama, the Velayuda and the Trishula, the weapon of god Shiva.
It seems that they don't have any specific dance movements. Their dance is relatively free.
Well, of course, this is a sheer exhibition or representation or a spontaneous presentation of their devotion The instrument kavadi that they carry on their shoulders, the round-shaped instrument with peacock feathers on either side, symbolize the 2 feet of God Kataragama. They believe that they carry the feet of God Kataragama.
And now following this Kavadi dance, we now see Panduka, the elephant belonging to the Ganevatta Kataragama Devale in Piliyandala, who is under the responsibility of Mr. Chandana Katriyarachi.
The first trip of West dancers in the Kataragama Devale Perahera segment. When we observe the appearance of these West dancers, it could be said that they are assigned with the most glamorous task of heralding very important, very significant individuals with their charms and their dance forms.
And that troupe of West dancers were trained by Mr. Upananda Talgahagoda of the Ratna Kala Ayatanaya.
The Tavil and Nadaswaram group. This traditional Indian horn known as Nadaswaram and the big cylindrical drum Tavil are synonymous with the ceremonies of the Hindu temples.
Taking the streets now is the chief incumbent of the Kataragama Devale, and his attire is a good representation of the influence of the South Indian traditions.
And the ceremonial elephant of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devale for the 4th Randoli procession is Esala, belonging to Venerable Katugastota Sharada Thero of the Senanayaka Mudalindarama Pirivena in Pirisiyala, and he is accompanied by Aruna belonging to the Handala Rajamahaviharaya and Sankaraja belonging to the Sankapala Rajamahaviharaya in Ratnapura. And now we see the second troupe of West dancers who are represented in this procession once again by Mr. Upananda Talgahagoda of the Ratna Kala Ayatanaya.
Maintaining the main stance of the Kandian dance known as Mandia is one of the predominant features of the West dance. Whatever movement they do, it must be performed maintaining the Mandia position. It is customary that the dancers on either side stand in order of seniority of having their adorning ceremony.
And now we see the Basnayaka Nilame representations of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya. And on one side we see the younger son of the current Basnayaka Nilame of the Sri Maha Kataragama Devalaya in Kandy, who is Gayan Kanishka Bandara Walisundara. And on the other side, we see the Basnayaka Nilame of the Dodangwala Natha Devalaya, in fact the newly appointed Basnayaka Nilame of the Dodangwala Natha Devalaya, who is Akalanka Bandara Verapitiya.
Following the ancient traditions, the Basnayaka Nilames are also provided gods. And this is the commencement of the Pattini Devala procession. Once again, we have a group of flag bearers reminding us of the beginning of the procession of Sri Mahapattini Devalaya.
And these Buddhist flag bearers are represented by the Civil Defence Headquarters of Pallekele.
Goddess Pattini, considered a Buddhist deity today, was considered the goddess of chastity. According to ancient literature, the Pattini cult was brought here in the 12th century during King Gajaba's time. The well-known poem Chelapadikaram unfolds the story of this goddess.
It is believed that belief in Goddess Pattini with faith brought blessings on small children and women. She is supposed to be a goddess of noblest qualities, and those who believed in her were cured of hidden diseases, for example skin diseases, etc. And it is provided they led a religious life.
She is considered Buddhist because she has made a vow to be born as a man in order to attain Buddhahood. The Pattini Devala here is a troupe. It is interesting to note that all these horn players from beginning to end of the Hasala Perahera play the tune of the Gajaga Vannama.
And these Hevisi players are trained by Mr. M.P. Palita Nishanka, Mr. M.P. Palita Sirisena and Mr. M.P. Premadasa.
This tune has echoed through the hills of Sri Lanka, in fact the hills of Kandy, for centuries. The tunes of Gajaga Vannama.
The art of drumming is highly codified and developed, that every rhythmic pattern can be verbally expressed. Jing, 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 takata, takata, takata.
Followed by the Hevisi troupe, we now see the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Sri Mahapatini Devalaya on the Mount of Bandara, belonging to Mr. Kitsiri Kahatapitiya of Horana.
And it could be stated that the color of Goddess Patini is yellow, therefore the representatives, the officials, the dancers, elephants in this Perahera segment will be wearing yellow. And this is, in fact, an interesting appearance.
The Pattini Devala Perahera is the only segment that represents females in this grand pageant. And here it is interesting to note that the female Kandian dancers dancing the Panteru dance, and the Panteru is associated with Goddess Pattini. It is believed that the Panteru instrument is deriving from the sacred anklet of Pattini.
And followed by these Pantheru dancers, we see another female elephant, and she is Sita, belonging to Mr. Roshan Patiran of Maharagama.
Up next, we have a mixed folk dance.
And this dance act is trained by Ms. Takshila Sirivardana of the Takshila Kala Ayatanaya of Yatihalagala.
A combination of different dance forms with props associated with the activities of paddy cultivation. This dance predominantly representing the agrarian culture of Sri Lanka. The instruments used here are the sickle, the winnowing fan, the pot, and also a bunch of paddy.
And now we see the senior elephant Raja, belonging to Mr. Asanka Vijay Singh of Balangoda, joining the procession. And on the mount of Raja, we seeing an official carrying a canopy to symbolize protection to the godly ornaments of Goddess Pattini.
And this is a group of wood tappers or Paturu dancers.
Yet another popular folk dance of Sri Lanka.
And now we see the young elephant Tarindu, belonging to Venerable Kobawaka Damminda Thero, who is in fact the chief incumbent of the Kirivehera Rajamahaviharaya in Kataragama.
A group of female Savaran dancers.
In fact, this is the Chamara dance. According to our classical poetry of the Kota period, white tussles in motion and majestic elephants are considered auspicious signs.
I think this performance is symbolic of the act of fanning.
This dance performance is in fact trained by Miss Ajanta Kandegedara of the Sarasavi Kala Ayathanaya of Molagoda. Now we see another senior female elephant taking part in the Sri Mahapattini Devala procession, who is Kumari, belonging to Mr. Asanka Vijay of Balangoda. In fact, there's a lot of representation from the Sabaragamu province in terms of elephants in the Sri Mahapattini Devala procession this year.
And this is the female counterpart of the West dance, the traditional West dance.
The female Kandian dance tradition is quite recent in Sri Lanka. It started in the 1940s, but today has become one of the mainstreams of Kandian dance.
Speaking of female dance performers, we have seen female elephants, and this particular female elephant also belongs to a lady, and she is Miss Shriyani Gunawardana, and the elephant belonging to her is Manike, who we see in front of us right now.
The first group of West dancers in the Pattini Devala procession join in this night-long celebration.
In front of us is the first West dance troupe trained by Mithun Bandara of the Mithun Bandara Kala Ayathanaya of Watapulua, who will be escorting the ceremonial elephant carrying the godly ornaments of Goddess Pattini.
It is interesting to note that all the rhythm patterns played on the gatabere that accompanies the West dance are based on the four basic mnemonics known as Tajjitonnam. The drums are always played as two groups, one group keeping the main beat and the other group adding variations to stimulate the dancers.
Now we are about to see the chief incumbent of the Pattini Devala in Kandy, walking
followed-
right before the main tusker or elephant group. Yes, Nilesh?
And the ceremonial elephant in the fourth Randoli procession is Mangala, belonging to the chief incumbent, the Mahanayaka Thero of the Sri Lanka Ramani Nikaya, and is under the responsibility of Mr. Udara Galapatti. And accompanied by Mangala, we see Manike belonging to Mr. H.R. Nishanka of Kegol, and also Rani belonging to Mr. Richard Godakumbura of Balangoda. And now we see the second troupe of West dancers who are trained by Mr. Chandana K. Jayaratna of the Chandana Kala Ayatana of Matale.
We must all be grateful to these great dancers, the traditional dancers of the Kalayatanas. After the decline of the Gurukula system in the British period, it was these institutionalized Kalayatanas that have kept the dance going.
And now we see the representation of the Basnayak Nilame of the Sri Mahapattini Devalaya in Kandy, who is the Basnayak Nilame of the Ambekka Katuragama Devalaya, Shanaka Bandaranayaka.
That ends the Pattini Devala procession, and now we see the speciality of the Randoli processions. The Randolis or palanquins of the four Devalas being carried after the entire procession. First of all, we see the palanquin of the Natha Devale, and second in line we have the palanquin of the Vishnu Devale, and next we see the palanquin carriers of the Kataragama Devale, and last we have the palanquin of the Pattini Devale. That marks the end of the fourth Randoli procession. Let there be timely rains that will bring life-giving water to our fields and ensure a bountiful harvest. May our country prosper. Dalada Samidu Pitai.